give us a quick intro about yourselves, your products, and when did you encounter security for the first time?
Okay, I'll start. So I'm Olly, CTO of FreeAgent. If you saw Maria, you'd hear we're a small business accounting application specifically targeted at micro businesses and freelancers based out of Edinburgh. Sorry, what was the
Yeah, no worries. It's the end of the day. So, when did you encounter security for the first time?
I suppose security has always been quite front of mind for me. I mean, I was, the CTO, one of the co-founders, so the first developer on the team. And, securing servers is something that, we had to do, all the rest of it. But I suppose information security was something that really came front of mind the first time we really took investment. And people caught, asking for, what's your information? Can you send us your information security policy, please? A bit like
Didn't you do some hacking?
Better write one of those.
Didn't you do some hacking when you were earlier on your career?
No cyber hacking for me, I'm afraid. Maybe Jean-Baptiste.
None that I can talk about, but yeah. So on my side, I'm a CTO at Sqreen. We build a solution that helps people secure their web applications and monitor security on your behalf. So that's a very simple product. And previously, I was a security researcher, so I was at Apple, and I was in the team in charge of attacking internally Apple products. So we found a lot of issues communicating with developers and telling them how to build secure code and to reach the security expectations you can have in today's world. We found hundreds of vulnerabilities on all the Apple ecosystem. Many you may still have if you own an iPhone, and yes,
that's nice to know.
So that's my background.
So you just mentioned like investors being concerned about information security policy. What steps did you took from the very beginning until maybe today? Like, how did you think about security? Was it a priority or not? What kind of measures were you taking at every stage?
I think in the very early stages, certainly when you're pre-seed, well, probably different if you're a security product, but for online accounting application, obviously it's in your mind that you want to protect the data and you want to take backups and so on. But actually, it was never a priority at that level. Only really when you've got some traction. And people have given you money, and customers are there, and they ask. Not only are customers asking questions about security, but investors are very much asking security. So, for us, it was certainly around sort of Series A, first big round, where it really started to become something that is a priority and probably is number one.
And you published the CTO checklist for SaaS companies. So, what do you think are the measures that companies should take in place before seed? And between seed and Series A, at least like sanity measures, right? Like minimum.
Yes, so it's hard to answer because you are always in a rush, and sometimes you start your product from nothing, and it's complicated to really take a step back and ask yourself what kind of security measure you should do. What we did and what I would advise a new company to do is like to really take maybe 3 days of some network specialist that would be able to craft the perfect network architecture. On AWS, it's like nothing. It costs zero. In exploitation, it's just the time to build it, but once you have it, you can be safe. And that's what we did since day one. So we did it ourselves because I was like a network geek, and I advised dozens of companies to build like secure networks, and so we've been able to. I was like staring at my AWS console and saying, okay, let's build it in this way. And so yeah, basically if you start clean the first day, you can have like isolated databases, isolated applications, and like nothing can be accessed from the internet, and that's what you should do since day one. But actually, yes, we built the CTO security checklist, which is an open source actionable security checklist with all the basic measures you could implement when you're a company, whether you are in seed, in Series A or post-Series A. When you listen to security specialists, they will always tell you, okay, you need to do that and that and that. There is no compromise. Obviously, as a founder, as a CTO, when you build your product, you don't have a choice. You need to do your product first, but there are very simple measures, security measures that you can build upon since day one, and that does not cost much, neither in time, neither in money.
For example?
For example, while segregating your network on AWS, forcing your employee to use two-factor authentications, having clear processes when you onboard someone or when you offboard someone, and a security specialist will tell you, oh, you need to have a centralized annuary like LDAP or Active Directory with all your employees. But come on, we are 5, there is no reason to do that. Obviously not. If you are 5, you don't need that. All the tools you will have when you grow, you can rely on process at the beginning to get the similar result.
And for you, on the measures you've been taking to take care of security, like, do you think about internal security, external security? Like, do you start thinking about different areas and different priorities, or is it for you just a broad topic of security?
No, it's very broad, but it's a focus on all of those areas. And I suppose at different stages of the life cycle of the company, you know, we're at 140 staff now, and thinking about even things now, like about physical office security. We've got 2 floors, and you know, who's setting the alarm on one floor at night? You know, even to that extent. But certainly from information security, things like GDPR coming along has a much bigger impact the larger you are, and I suppose the bigger the target you are. But you know, I think you know the CTO checklist that JB's produced is great. It kind of distills things like ISO 27001, you know, massive, you know, corporate governance stuff, but down into kind of manageable steps that actually make sense. So.
And at what point did you like give the role to someone? It's been always within your responsibility security, or did at some point you hire someone who was owning security?
Last Thursday, yeah.
So
up until it was,
when you IPO, you need a security guy.
Absolutely, yeah. Very hard hire, actually. But up until then, it was sort of coordinated by myself, our head of infrastructure, and one of our kind of senior ops people. We kind of largely ran it together, but yeah, now we have a dedicated person that's helping coordinate a lot of that. But it's actually you know, security is a role for everybody at some level within the business, and trying to educate staff in that. Everything from, you know, dealing with phishing emails, which is an increasingly common occurrence, all the way to, you know, developers. Do they understand kind of like OWASP principles for, you know, web application security? So it's kind of everyone's role. So it's some sort of evangelist role as much as anything else, actually.
That's interesting. Like, how do you take care of educating your employees? Like, I see many times, even at Point 9, we are getting phishing emails, and we share them. Like, look, this is how it looked like. Don't click on this. Don't give your data. So, how do you make sure that your people are on top of the potential threats coming from security?
Yeah. So this is something that we, you know, we've tried our best by trying to communicate through, you know, we have like weekly team meetings with the whole company. We get together, so you can do a talk to the whole company, and you can kind of share documentation. But you know, and that works to a certain extent. What we're looking at now is kind of like computer-based training programs. So there are quite a lot of these coming up now. I don't know whether you've seen these, where staff basically kind of get a training course that they can do in their own time, and it's all online, and it will email them questions that they have to kind of answer. So it keeps them engaged over a longer period of time. It's quite an interesting model. You kind of pay per. It's not really. I suppose it is SaaS at some level. It's, you know, you pay per staff member per year, and you know, they're constantly engaging you with security. So I think that's a really good way of doing it. It's something that we're looking at right now.
And in the customers you speak with, or in your experience, like, when do you think security requires a guy who is going to own that? How does it evolve, the responsibility of security within an organization as they grow?
Well, it depends as well on what your company looks like. If you're an extremely technical company and you have like mostly engineers, engineers do not need the same learning than your salespeople, for instance, that does not have the same technical background. So it really depends on the stage of your company, and it also depends on your business. If you have like large customers that require you to have like a SOC 2 or OSI certification, then you need someone faster to help you on this. And I also think that complex laws such as the GDPR might change the game on this, and you may need to have someone earlier in the company to take care of this.
And security providers are well known for spreading fear, right? Like they send you emails every time there is a data breach. They send you like hackers all the time in pictures. Like, as a potential customer of such kind of products, how do you feel about this marketing? Like, what triggers you to make a purchase of software? Are you already having a budget for security software? How do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, for us, yeah, we do get quite a lot of unsolicited email. There's been quite a lot of talk today about that. And yeah, they do spread fear, but at some level that's justified. It's because it's, you know, and yeah, so we are setting a budget for that sort of stuff. And we use a lot of open source tooling at the moment, things like Nessus, and we use Qualys for kind of scanning. But yeah, I think it's increasingly important. But you could spend money on software, you can spend money on pen tests, but is that more useful than a bounty program, perhaps?
Do you do any of those things? Do you do pen testing from the outside? Do you have a bounty program? How do you deal?
So we do pen testing, and we've done that for a number of years, and we do that at different levels. We do it at the application level, so the typical web application security, an infrastructure level, and actually most recently at an office level. So, you know, actually testing the security of the Wi-Fi in the office and so on. And you know, that's great, and it definitely highlights problems. I definitely recommend doing that at the earliest opportunity. I think getting an independent third party having a go at your app is a really good thing to do, and they will probably find problems that you'll never find. And we also run automated static code analysis and things like that. But bounty programs, I think, ultimately, if you can get it right, would probably be the best way, because it's continually testing you. It's basically been pen tested consistently, but we don't have, at the moment, a formal bounty program, but it's something we're definitely keen to look at.
And on those examples, I think at the end what you have is an issue, right? Like, either through the bounty or through the pen testing, you will find there is something that needs to be taken care of. Mm-hmm. So how do you prioritize those issues with your existing roadmap, with your future roadmap, with your technical debt? Like, how do those issues go into the time of your developers?
I suppose it depends at some level on the severity of the issue. We've certainly had at least on one occasion where a pen tester has discovered something that they and us considered critical, and in which case it's literally just drop whatever you're doing and just fix it as soon as possible within a matter of hours. So that, you know, but everything else, I suppose, you have to assess on a risk basis. You know, what is the risk of not fixing this? Is it that, you know, is it high? Is it medium? Low? And so, you know, we may have KPIs that there are no outstanding high or medium level issues. But I suppose there's also security features in the app as well. Things that, so for example, two-factor authentication was something that, you know, our customers ultimately. I mean, we wanted to do it, but it's always difficult to prioritize that up the list. But then when customers reach a certain level of demand, then you kind of have to do it. So I suppose it's balancing sort of risk and demand, I suppose.
And do you feel that you have visibility over potential incidents that are happening? Like, do you know if, for example, in last year someone was actually trying to hack you or not? Do you have a high degree of confidence around those topics?
I think we have reasonable confidence. I mean, you know, we do have kind of intrusion detection systems there, but they do generate. We were talking about this actually. They generate a lot of noise. The signal-to-noise ratio is not great there, and there are tools and, you know, third parties and vendors that will you know, potentially sell products that apply machine learning and threat detection. But again, it's undetermined about how actually good they are. but we can always do better, I think. I think it's very difficult. It's one of the most difficult things, get the alerting and monitoring right.
For us, when we invested on Sqreen, one of the things that I got very excited during the due diligence was that I spoke with several very early stage companies, and they were saying, like, we were not aware that those things are happening. Now that I have Sqreen in production, I will feel like walking naked on the street if I don't have visibility over what's going on. So maybe, can you tell us, without obviously disclosing any name, can you tell us a bit of the kind of things that you've seen on your customers?
Yeah, one more time, it depends on the customer, obviously, but yeah, we see many different kind of attacks. So Sqreen is like the perfect use case to monitor the security of your web applications, of your HTTP APIs, and so we see, for instance, we have a lot of financial institutions like crypto money platforms. I remember in the first days of Sqreen, we released our algorithm for detecting account takeover. It was really, we pushed it in production the evening. We came home, and when we were waked up at night because the machine that was running the algorithm crashed. One of our customers had such a big attack that the memory of our background data analysis job just crashed. And so we were absolutely not expecting that big attack on the first day of the release of this thing. But yeah, we have kind of customers that get attacked all the time. That's one of the things. And then we are able to detect penetration tests, obviously. And it's very easy because our customers often tell us, and we kind of help them to get through the report and to prioritize their action. So we have a very good database of knowledge about these kind of things. So we are as well able to detect all attackers that behave in a way similar to pen testers. And you know, a pen tester that you work for a legal company or that you work in the dark, they have very, very close behavior. So we kind of see these kind of things everywhere. And the other side of the things are the bug bounties. Yeah, so a lot of our customers that have bug bounties are attacked a lot. So are we, even if we don't have bug bounties. And actually, it's very difficult to be able to prioritize, to get back on the prioritization subject, to prioritize the feedback you get from the bug bounties, because unless you're a security specialist, I think you are often not able to say, okay, this is bullshit, or oh, this is quite important, and I should do it.
And did you, if you can disclose, like, maybe I should say, like, we've seen in our portfolio, I think at least once, time where a company got really hacked, and the guys were trying to, all over the place, try to get money from us. Otherwise, they will disclose the incident to everyone. So have you been in such a situation where you've seen, like, there is something is going wrong? How do you deal with that kind of problem? There's been anything like that?
We've not had a breach in that way. I mean, the only thing that of that sort of level is when we've had pen testers in and they've discovered a vulnerability, you know, that we've promptly fixed. But it's quite interesting to talk about the responsible disclosure. We did once put up the responsible disclosure page. We said, you know, if you find a problem, get in touch. And we didn't offer money. Actually, wasn't it? You know, we couldn't afford to do that. But it was, or maybe we couldn't afford not to. I don't know. But and that certainly saw an increase in attacks, the number of people getting in touch, claiming to have found problems, which actually were not really problems. But we ended up taking it down in the end because it just became so difficult to handle at the size that we were. I think you have to have a certain capacity in your team to be able to actually deal with the incidents that are coming in and being reported. If you haven't actually got the capacity to prioritize people to do that, then it's probably you're not ready for a bounty program. But know that there's nothing of that note. I think possibly in the early days, I think perhaps issues in the API, very, very early days, you know, of FreeAgent, where a customer maybe had spotted something in the API where they could perhaps, I think there was one issue where someone could access some data of another account. But again, that's the only thing, and that was like in the beta phase. It was like a long, long time ago. So fortunately, we haven't had that.
You've been or you've seen any incident, and like what will be the recommendations or the steps to take if you are in such a situation?
Well, first of all, it's not that much different than any outage you may have in your company, right? It's a security incident. It's an incident, so you need to keep the same process, such as a post-mortem, and to understand everything blamelessly with your team. But of course, there is, depending on what happened, a whole new measure of things you need to do. If customer data was exposed, well, you have to behave accordingly to the law in your country, obviously. So you may need to tell the authorities. If nothing was leaked and you just had like an intrusion, well, hopefully you are able to cut everything soon from the network. Maybe you can redeploy from scratch your infrastructure. That's where you can have like disaster recovery procedures. And obviously you need to understand deeply what happened, so you can take a look at all the logs, everything, the exceptions that occurred in your application, and in the end, understand company-wide what happened, educate your developers, your ops, and everyone that may have been involved in the security breach. But it's an iterative process, right? When something like that occurs, you need to understand it and get better for the next time, right? You need to understand what went wrong and take the right measures to enhance yourself each time.
Any questions from the audience? You're looking forward for the beers?
Can we go home yet?
So just if you have some final words, like what would you do differently this time if you started again considering security topics? Is there anything that you will deal with it differently?
Nothing that particularly springs to mind. I think for me it's like back in 2007 when we started FreeAgent, I think the threat landscape was very different to how it is in 2017. And there are tools available that weren't there before. But I certainly would probably look at whatever tools are out there, like Sqreen. I think definitely get that in there as soon as possible. Whereas I say, like 10 years ago, it's quite a different landscape. So, I mean, yeah, it's a different time. So I would probably do it differently. Just use the tools that are out there, for sure.
On the security point of view, I would have done nothing differently. But my advice or my focus, if I was starting a new company, would be hire your first employee with a good security background, which we did.
Go ahead.
Reading this recent Goldman Sachs report on cyber, and they plotted this graph where they showed the enterprise value of cybersecurity companies. And they said that over the last 20 years, there's never been a cybersecurity company worth more than $30 billion. Arguably, it's a very big number. But there's never been one, and the tenure of companies over time is relatively short in the cyberspace. And they're attributing this to the fact that cyber is intrinsically this problem where you're trying to block a new emergent behavior. And once you have a company that's particularly good at blocking that emergent behavior and learning how to solve it, then attackers will find something else. And it's difficult for that company to sort of repurpose itself to something new. And that's why the company churns over time and isn't worth more than 30 billion. Do you have any views on that?
So your question is, how do the security products behave faced to attackers that are able to change all the time, right?
Yeah, I guess like how as your business evolves and grows really big, like how do you think about building a long-standing company that can evolve over the long term and be worth, huge amounts of money, given that you're in a space which is constantly adapting and you have to reinvent yourself as your attackers do?
So it's true that you have a lot of new attacks that occur all the time. The security field is something that evolves all the time, really doing some research on our behalf at Sqreen is something that takes us a lot of time. But basically, all the measures that an attacker can take to hack into an application, they are all quite similar. You have, I don't know if you are familiar with the OWASP top 10. That's like the top 10 vulnerabilities that occur on web applications. This list is revised every 3 years or so, and it did not changed since like 10 years, right? We have been, the items have been shuffling together, but they are always the same items, right? So basically, all the basic bricks of the attacks are the same and are caused by the same vulnerabilities in the applications. What happens is that our world is changing constantly, right? Like 5 years ago, nobody was doing Docker. 7 years ago, nobody was doing AWS. And each time I don't know, 3 years ago, nobody was doing single-page applications. So each time you add new technologies, yes, you had new ways to hack into things, right? But if you take a look at a specific model, you don't have a lot of breakthrough amongst exploitation, right? What you need to have is awareness of what your application can be victim of, right? And that's it. But on a different point of view, that's the same thing, because your application, you can protect it for SQL injections regarding your database. All right, tomorrow you add a new database. Well, you have a new kind of risk. You need to learn again what is the API of this new database and how you need to protect yourself for this new piece of software you just included in your application. So
I think you'd be pretty happy with 30 billion.
Sorry?
You'd be pretty happy with 30 billion.
Yeah.
Hello? Quick question. So full disclosure, I work for Okta, but at one point do you, as a CTO, start considering consuming third-party services to help with that landscape of saying, okay, do I build my own auth, or do I consume a third-party service, or what's your thought process on that?
Any third-party service, you mean?
Specifically around security items. So, specifically around security auth, so if you're auth as a service, how are you storing data, username, passwords? How are you securing APIs? How are you doing? From a technical standpoint, and then of course you also have on the employee standpoint.
Maybe Olly?
I mean, we have our own kind of due diligence process when we're assessing third parties. I suppose for a security, would it be any different for a security third party? I don't know that it would. I think you have to look in there. What are their credentials? Send me your information security policy, and let's have a discussion about how you treat our data and where does it reside, and all the other questions you kind of want to ask. I think they'll probably treat it the same as all other vendors, which is with as much suspicion as possible until they can convince me otherwise.
On my side, we sell security as a service. So yes, I'm a firm believer that SaaS software can help increase your security a lot. So yes, you are supposed to use password managers. So some of them work as SaaS services. You may use like denial of services protection, such as Cloudflare or AWS. This is kind of SaaS. You are supposed to use Sqreen, obviously, so this is SaaS. I strongly believe that everything you can do to improve the security of your company, if there are measures you can do using SaaS, well, you would be a fool not to do it, because it costs no time and it's a very low overhead. So yeah.
Thank you. Do we give an applause to those guys? And thank you everyone for staying till the end.